socialist country, you have this welfare system that is available for anybody, even either French or alien. So there are hundreds of thousands of people who come, and it is very strange. There is a kind of a dark alliance between some kind of globalist capitalism, which find that it is good to really to import workers from abroad, because hoping that they will be satisfied with lower wages, and also the left-wing parties and trade unions, because, for example, the communist trade unions, very powerful ones in France, they are abandoned by French workers. French workers don't want to be members, so they try to get foreign workers to become members of their unions. And there is a kind of an alliance, but the problem is that this alliance is destroying national identity, because obviously we can afford, as every country in the world, a few aliens. My wife personally also comes from is Japanese, for example. Well, I guess there can be some few French living in Japan. There are a few thousand French, or I don't know, British, German in Japan. It is not a problem. But when you have millions of people from a different culture, different race, different religion, moving to another country, obviously it is the source of problems, political problems, and problems of any kind, social problems too. And we have problems in France, not only in France, but also in Britain and in other countries, because the sons of these migrants who do not feel 100% French, they have some resentment against our society. They cut the roots with the society of the fathers, and the crime of the rate of crime, for example, among us is very high, and we have all kinds of problems, and with this so-called multicultural, multi-ethnical society, which is unfortunately is not a peaceful society.
Well, this must give your liberal and leftist opponents a lot of difficulty when they come to criticize you or call you a racist, that R word, which is used so much and so inaccurately for Europeans who want to defend our heritage. When they attack you as a racist, and as you say, you are married to a Japanese lady, at the same time you believe that Europeans and European culture, traditions, ethnic traits and values should have the right to preservation, and you know that if this continued on a massive level, which this immigration is doing, that it would cause a real danger to the integrity and the very nature of the European people.
Yes. It should be obvious to anybody that when you get millions of people moving to another country by bringing with them their own beliefs, their own way of life, their own customs, right. And we especially have a problem now with some Muslims. The status, for example, of women is not what it is in our developed country. And when this happens, obviously political and social problems naturally occur. It is not the fact of people being bad, of people being racist. It is not even the fact that foreigners behave like sometimes like invaders. This is quite natural. This happens, and it is a duty of people in charge of government to protect their nation against this kind of menace. But what we have now is, unfortunately, exactly the contrary. And there is a kind of a political correctness that brings a kind of a moral fear, a moral terror. If you protest, if you just say that, for example, this massive immigration policy is completely crazy and that it is gradually destroying your country, you're labeled as a racist, for example, and it has absolutely nothing with race or supremacism or anything like that. I would be the first to say that if there were 10 million French living in Japan, this will be a problem for Japanese society, for Japanese unity.
Sure. It's not racism to understand, that there are racial differences and racial heritages, and that different individual unique cultures have the right to preservation. These liberals in France, I know. In fact, I saw a bumper sticker when I was in Paris recently, and it had the slogan "Save Tibet." And there seems to be a few million Frenchmen who are very activated and totally organized to try to protect Tibet. In fact, a lot of Frenchmen tried to stop the Chinese torch relay through Paris because they wanted to save the Tibetan unique culture and heritage, which they knew that Japanese mass invasion and Japanese hegemony would destroy. And yet these same people don't seem to want to give the European people the right to preserve our heritage, which I think is just as precious and just as wonderful as any heritage in Tibet.
Yes, absolutely. Well, when we travel to Europe, you see what a wonderful culture and civilization for all ages, Middle Age, Renaissance, classical times, and so on. And we would like to keep this, and we obviously agree for any people to benefit by this from this influence if they want. I am not shocked by the fact that Algeria or any African country is protecting its own identity, trying to develop with their own means, on their own way, giving to their fellow citizens a kind of a priority, for example, for jobs, for employment, for education. All this seems to me and to my friends perfectly natural. Just what we want is that our people get exactly the same rights under the rule of reciprocity.
Yes, and for simply wanting the same thing for our European heritage as Africans want for their heritage, and Chinese want for their heritage, and Japanese want for their heritage, and every other group, Jews obviously want for their heritage. We are called haters and bigots, and in fact, there are a whole set now, as I understand, of increased so-called hate speech laws, so-called hate speech, because it's not hate speech to simply have differing opinions about history or issues, or even to say immigration is something that can damage, massive immigration can damage France. It could become a prosecutable offense.
Yes.
You've been one of the leaders.
Yes, we had until let's say 40 years ago, we were one of the, together with the United States, I think, and some others, one of the freest country in the world, because the speech and the press was completely free. The only limitations were if you were insult, and also libel if you say that I don't know somebody's has robbed a bank and it is not true. Obviously he could sue you for libel. That were the only two limitations of speech in France. And now because of this political correctness, we have all these laws that prevent us to speak freely about history and what happened really in World War II. This law, it's unbelievable, is a communist law that was passed it was a communist bill at the time when the left got majority in the French parliament. It is really strange. I even got letters when I had troubles. I even got letters from the Russian parliament, even from the vice president of the Duma, that is the Russian parliament, and also from the president of the Russian university, who wrote to me, we in Russia, we also had this kind of a communist law. Fortunately, we get we got rid of all this oppressive system, and we never thought that this would happen to France. But it is very sad to say there is more freedom of speech now, even with Mr. Putin or Medvedev.
Right.
There is much more freedom of speech in Paris than in Moscow.
You mean there's more freedom of speech in Moscow than in Paris?
Sorry, in Moscow than in Paris. Right. Yes.
Well, I want you to talk a little bit about that, and to show you how terrible the law is for our listeners, and we have many thousands of listeners all over the United States and all over the world, and this is one of the big facts. This is one of the most important facts that the people of the world are not really understanding, is the